All right, so welcome to session 2 of Alma Analytics training. Thank you everyone for the time for coming. I hope everyone had a nice trip up here, or at least decent one. So this one's gonna be a little bit more advanced than the last one. There may be more sort of like in analytics demos as well. I think depending on the section of their presentation. And again, like the presenters are Kim Rinaldo from Trinity, Joe Frawley from Conn College, Nathan Mealy from Wesleyan, Rebecca McCollum from Wesleyan, and me, Todd Falkowski from Trinity as well. And so what we're gonna do is start out with like formatting a report. So there's in analytics there's a substantial there's quite a few ways you can sort of customize and format reports. And I'm going to go into like actually a range of things. It's not going to be just like style and format and so forth. And as I mentioned here in this, it's helpful to format your report sort of in the design piece of analytics itself. So I'm going to be doing pieces that are going to happen both in the criteria and the results tab within analytics. In some cases, it's going to vary based on what you want to accomplish. And it's good to sort of to bake in some of this formatting and customization in at the design level, because that way it's sort of built into your report from the ground level. It allows you to sort of export when you're exporting or sending the reports to other people, things like that. You're kind of like you have that customization built in, and that way, because you could do like what you're going to be seeing, you could do a lot of it in Excel as well. You could export and then do all your changes and formats in Excel. But this way, it kind of, if you bake it into your report at the design level, it'll work in a number of ways. And that way, like if someone's viewing your report, like you're saying to other people, it'll give a little bit more context. It may reduce confusion, and it may do things like highlight certain data elements that you want within it. So I'm going to be like some of the things I'm going to be covering is sort of data formats. Custom text, replacement text, custom error messages, custom titles, alternate styling, and conditional formatting. And I've been kind of debating how much, like I have a lot of slides, so I'm debating if I want to kind of go into analytics and do demos of this as well. I'm not sure because I'm covering so many different aspects of it. So it may be mostly slides at this point. But feel free to stop me with questions at any point, or if you have like comments or something like that. And then we can kind of like, and I can go into analytics and sort of like demo parts of it. So the first one, this one I think actually we kind of did touch on the first session. It's going to be, this is a pretty common issue you may want to address when you're building reports. So when you are setting filters, what you're going to do is like, if you set a filter, like in this case, this is a report that's showing like Watkinson, the big red box is the library. The purple and blue are different locations within that library, which I kind of said is filters. So what happens, the default state when you build a report is you're going to see what you're seeing on this point here, where it's just like, if like, for instance, like Watkinson was the, what I said is the filter. It basically, when you look at the results tab, it just comes out to be one giant cell as you're seeing here. Which is okay. In some cases, that's helpful for viewing it, like in analytics. The issues are like if you export to Excel, that creates some issues. That creates some like a little bit more trouble in terms of like needing to like work with the data because you just have one large cell. It's not granular in any sense. So this is the pretty common thing. The default state is to just do it in that sense, where just like if it's just one filter, it's just going to be one giant cell. In many cases, you're going to want to change that, even if it looks redundant. So what you do is, this will be in the criteria tab. you're going to want to, like, for the filter that you're concerned with, like you want to have repetition or have it sort of repeat, there's going to be that little, whatever filter it is, you're going to have that little, like, the 3-line kind of menu button. You drop that down and you pick column properties. And then that'll open up a second window where it's, you get a number of tabs across the top. If you switch over to column format, and towards the bottom you have value suppression. And this is not really intuitive the way they word it and so forth. So the default is suppress. And that's what's going to give you, like, if you just have that one variable of Watkinson, that'll just be one giant cell. In many cases, what you're going to want to do is actually switch that to repeat. And you can do this across all the columns where you think there's going to be sort of like one large cell. And so it's actually good to switch it to repeat. And what that will do is, for each row in your table, it'll essentially create the Watkinson library as a repetition all the way down. And again, it looks redundant, but in some cases, when you're exporting it or trying to work with data in certain ways, it's nice to have the granularity of those multiple cells. So in this case, where I switched both the library, which is the far left column, and then the location or location code, the second column in, I just switched both of those to repeat rather than suppress, and that way you get that repetition down the line, which is again makes it easier to export, to work with an Excel, and also when you're doing sorting. Doing sorting tasks, that helps in that case as well. So again, we covered that a little bit in session 1. I just wanted to retouch it because this is a very common thing that comes up a lot. Any questions on that piece before we go on? The next one is custom formats. So this is like data formats. So there's when you're running reports, in this case, like there's on the left, you have the transaction amount is like a currency essentially. So default when you run the report, it's just going to give you that 35, those just the plain integers. There's no it can increase some confusion if you're sending the reports out to different viewers and so forth. So it's helpful to change data formats in a lot of cases. Now again, this is context sensitive, so it's not just like currency. It's also, I'll be touching dates, but there's a lot of things like if you're working with a data format that has that sort of standardization, you're able to go into and adjust that a little bit to have it display with a little bit more context and information on it. So the second column is after I apply the changes. You get the actual, like, the dollar signs with the 2 decimal places for the cents, which just makes reports a little bit easier to read from other viewers. So this case is, so I went into the column I was concerned about, the transaction amount under the fines and fees transactions. I hit the menu, again, the little menu button there, and picked column properties again. In this case, it's opened up the same window that we did for the previous one where we were solving the data repetition issue. And so what we have now is you just switch over to the data format tab. And in this case, and what it will do is like, Alma Analytics will try to assess sort of what data you're working with, and then give you options based on that. So if it's in this case currency, it's going to give you currency options. If it's date, it's going to give you sort of date options. So if you check that little override default data format, then you have a number of options here. So what I did is I switched to treat the number as currency. Currency symbol, I picked the dollar sign. Again, you can pick other currency symbols if you're working with like euro or something like that. You have those options as well. Negative format, I think the default was the -123 piece here. But the other one you might want to change, in this case for U.S. currency, is I actually changed the decimal places to 2 in here, so that we have the 2 decimal places after the period. So you have like you can better track the cents essentially of whatever the transaction amount was. And I also checked, which I think was not default checked, is the at the bottom there, the use 1,000 separator. So if you want like commas after like $1,000 or something, you can do that as well. So you can play with that and adjust it as needed to just sort of like better present the information you're trying to convey to anyone that you're sending the report to. Now, on that topic again, so this is again still the data format tab. In this case, I ran a report with a transaction date, and I think the first one may have been the default that came out, which is fine for most people. That is intelligible, but again, like there may be some confusion, and sometimes where you have like a January 1st or something like that, or different dates, you may not read well. So if you want a little bit more clarity on that, you can, if you go to, again, the data format tab under the column that you're interested in. In this case, like for the dates, they give you a whole range. You can sort of see, I took a little screenshot of all the date formats you can do. And so you can do, you can switch it over to, like in one case I did the actual, like the month written out with the date, comma, year. The other one usually have the day dash 3-digit of the month, and then the year. So again, like you can pick, and they again, as you can see in the image on the right there, they give you a lot of options to work with there. So it may just, in some cases, it may be helpful to change something else that will work better and give you more context for your report that you're building for dates. Again, so it's not just currency and dates. There's a number of other data formats that are context sensitive to the actual values that are in that field. I'm just kind of giving you some examples of that.